Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to give you a brief introduction to endocrine, and my goal is to drop a few of these for every chapter that we're going through. And so one of the big things about endocrine is that we have to remember that there's two different messenger systems. There's going to be the endocrine system, and there's going to be the nervous system. And your textbook is going to refer to the endocrine system as slow, which I pretty much disagree with. Nervous system is extremely fast. We can fire it off 5 times a second. Endocrine system, if you've ever been close to an accident, not in an accident yourself, hopefully, but close to an accident, you will realize that how quickly the flushing of the face, the nervousness, the increase in cardiac, the increase in respiratory, the sweating, and all that actually comes on. And for most people, it's hard for them to realize the difference between the startle reflex that they had and then this flush that happens afterwards. The main difference is the frequency of firing in the nervous system can just be stopped. Once the endocrine system responds and we release epi or norepi into the system, adrenaline, right, would be the street name for that. There's a 10 to 15 minutes where it's in there because we released an amplitude or a bolus of a certain hormone into the system that now has to be cleared. So again, they're both fairly quick. Nervous tends to be a little bit faster. Endocrine, because of half-life of a hormone, is going to be out there a little bit longer. So that would be the one thing I wanted to talk about. The other one is when we start to break down these hormones, we're going to see that molecular they're either amino acid derived, or they can be lipid derived or cholesterol derived. The majority of the ones we're going to be talking about are going to be amino acid derived, which means then when we switch over to nutrient side of things or nutrition, then we have to make sure that we're getting enough amino acids or protein in our diet then to drive our hormones. The other side would then tend to be things like cholesterol, which is going to give us our estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And then our eicosanoids are going to be lipid based. So then if we talk about a little bit about positive and negative feedback, the majority of our endocrine function is going to be negative feedback, which means if the body were looking for testosterone in the system, the hypothalamus through the pituitary gland is then going to release things to increase testosterone. So we'd be looking at how much testosterone is actually in the system. If the hypothalamus determines there's not enough, then we're going to release FSH and LH to increase that, which are then going to act on the adrenal glands or the gonads to increase that. Once there is enough testosterone, then we will shut that down. And that can be done through releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones. A couple other factors that we will see is we have at least one that's a negative or a positive feedback, which would be oxytocin, which is also known as the love hormone. But the biggest thing we tend to think about it being is the birthing hormone, which is a positive feedback. So we're going to wrap this one up and we'll add a little bit more endocrine as we go on. Take care.